The year did not begin with a whisper. It began with a scream. If you were awake in the early months of 2025, you felt it. It wasn't just the headlines scrolling across your phone screen in the dead of night. It was something heavier. A pressure in the air. A static charge that made the hair on your arms stand up, signaling that the rules of the world we knew were dissolving. For generations, we had treated the earth like a machine, predictable, manageable, silent. We built our cities on fault lines and our mansions on the coast, confident that the ground would hold and the tides would obey. But in 2025, the machine broke. The silence ended. We thought we were watching the climate change. In reality, we were watching a prophecy breathe. The ancient texts, written on parchment by men who saw visions of the future by candlelight, spoke of a time when the natural order would not just shift, but revolt. They spoke of birth pains. And anyone who has witnessed a birth knows the truth. It is violent. It is bloody. It is a moment where life and death dance so closely, you cannot tell them apart. This is not a story about weather. This is the story of the moment the earth began to contract, the sky of blood. It started in the West, the city of angels. January in Los Angeles is usually a time of cool relief, a respite from the desert heat. But there was no relief this year. The Santa Ana winds didn't just blow, they howled, carrying with them a dryness so profound it felt like the moisture was being sucked from your very lungs. Then came the spark. It wasn't one fire. It was a siege. Within hours, the hills were not just burning, they were liquid. The fire moved with a predatory intelligence, racing down the canyons faster than cars could drive. But this wasn't what stopped the world in its tracks. We have seen fires before. We have seen the blackened skeletons of homes and the tearful interviews. No, what froze the blood of millions watching on live streams was the sky. It wasn't gray with smoke. It wasn't orange with a reflection of flames. It was red, a deep, visceral crimson, the color of a fresh wound. The smoke had risen so high, and the particulate matter was so dense that it filtered the sunlight into a spectral wavelength that bathed the entire Los Angeles basin in the color of blood. Imagine standing on a freeway overpass, the traffic gridlocked for miles. You look up, expecting to see the sun, but instead, you see a hemorrhage. The light hitting the concrete is red. The faces of the people in the cars next to you are cast in a demonic scarlet hue. Ash begins to fall, not like snow, but like heavy gray flakes of skin, coating the windshields, coating the streets, coating the terrified crowds fleeing the coast. The heat was physical, a weight pressing against the chest. The sound was a low-frequency roar, the sound of a blast furnace consuming 150,000 acres of history, $53 billion of human effort, homes, businesses, infrastructure vaporized. But amidst the sirens and the screaming, a deeper memory stirred. A memory of ancient words spoken by an exile on the island of Patmos. He had seen this. He had seen the sky turn to blood. He had seen the trees burn. We called it a historic wildfire event. The Bible called it the first trumpet. The atmosphere choked. The sun refused to shine its true light. For days, millions of people lived under a canopy that looked like the inside of a vein. It was a visual declaration that the covenant of peace between man and nature was broken. The earth was not just burning, it was bleeding. Revelation 8-7. The number flashed in the minds of those who knew. Hail and fire followed, mingled with blood, and they were thrown to the earth. The scientists explained the atmospheric refraction. They explained the ember cast and the wind velocity. But they could not explain the dread. They could not explain why. When looking at that red sky, even the atheist felt a shiver of recognition. It felt like judgment. It felt like the opening seal of a terrifying letter addressed to humanity, written in ash and fire. And while the west burned, the south began to roar. The roaring of the waves. If fire is the anger of the earth, water is its power. In March, the eyes of the world turned to Australia. We are used to storms. We name them. We track them. We categorize them. Cyclone Alfred, a category, a number, a projected path. It feels safe when you can track it on a screen. But when Alfred made landfall, the screen didn't matter. The ocean did not behave like water. It behaved like a beast. Witnesses on the coast described the sound first. It wasn't the rhythmic crashing of surf. It was a continuous, deafening thunder. A roaring that vibrated through the bedrock of the coastal towns. The barometric pressure dropped so low that ears popped and heads throbbed miles inland. Then the wall came. A 26-foot surge. Close your eyes and visualize a 2-story building. Now visualize that building made of liquid force, moving at the speed of a freight train. It didn't wash over the land. It erased it. The footage captured by drones showed a terrifying transformation. Streets became rivers. Parks became lakes. The distinction between the ocean and the land vanished entirely. In the river systems, the water rose 43 feet. Trees that had stood for a century were snapped like matchsticks. Cars bobbed in the currents like plastic toys. The insignificance of human engineering mocked by the sheer volume of the deluge. But again, it was the sound that haunted those who survived. In the shelters, huddled under blankets as the rain lashed the roofs like gravel, the elders and the young alike spoke of the roar. It was a sound of immense distress. The ocean was heaving, tossing itself onto the land with a violence that felt personal. It was impossible to watch the footage, the churning, brown chaos swallowing entire towns without feeling small, without feeling unprotected. For centuries, we believed we had tamed the sea. We built sea walls and levees. We mapped the currents. But in 2025, the sea reminded us that we are guests here. The prophecy spoke of a time when the anxiety of nations would be driven by the chaotic sound of the waters. It spoke of a perplexity, a confusion where leaders would look at the rising tides and have no answer. As the floodwaters receded, leaving behind a thick, stinking mud that covered everything, the sense of foreboding grew. The fire had taken the west. The water had taken the south. The elements were not acting in isolation. They were a choir, singing a discordant song of dismantling. It was the fulfillment of a specific, terrifying sign. A sign that the stability of the physical world was ending. The ocean was no longer a resource or a border. It was a threat. Luke 21:25. And on the earth distress of nations, with perplexity, the sea and the waves roaring. The news anchors used words like unprecedented and record-breaking. They spoke of climate patterns and La Niña. But the spirit of the age heard something else. It heard the groaning. It heard the second contraction. The water had joined the fire. The birth pains were getting closer together. The pillars of smoke, fire and water. Two elements we can see. Two elements we can run from. But there is a third terror, one that offers no warning and no escape. The terror of the ground itself betraying you. Myanmar, the Golden Land. A nation already fractured by the brutality of men, tearing itself apart in a civil war that had stripped the humanity from its soldiers. But in March, the war of men was silenced by the war of the earth. It happened in the morning, a time of markets and movement. The seismographs around the world spiked simultaneously. A magnitude 7.7. Numbers are sterile. They do not convey the horror of the earth liquefying. At the epicenter, the ground didn't just shake. It rolled. Buildings that had housed families for generations simply folded, collapsing into dust and screams. The road split open, revealing dark, jagged gashes into the belly of the earth. 45,000 lives ended in seconds. But it was what happened after the quake that turned the eyes of the prophecy watchers toward the text of Joel. As the dust settled, the fires began. Ruptured gas lines, overturned cooking fires, electrical sparks, the shattered cities ignited. But because of the unique geology, because of the way the earth had cracked and released trapped gases, the smoke did not disperse. It rose. Massive, vertical columns of black and gray smoke punched into the atmosphere. Seen from a distance, they looked like pillars holding up the sky. They were stark, terrifyingly vertical, standing like monuments to the devastation below. Blood and fire, and pillars of smoke. The phrase had always seemed poetic, a metaphor for war. But staring at the satellite imagery of Myanmar, the poetry became literal. The blood of the war, the fire of the aftermath, and the pillars of smoke rising from the ruin. The people of Myanmar, already crushed by the cruelty of a military junta, now faced the wrath of the planet. There was a biblical cruelty to it. Job upon his ash heap, suffering upon suffering. The smoke blocked the sun, creating a gloom that hung over the region for weeks. It was a darkness that could be felt. In the West, we scrolled past the images. We were too busy with our own fires, our own floods, our own inflation. But the global picture was becoming undeniable. The earth was striking everywhere at once. The far north of Israel was under attack. The kings of the east were moving ships. The isles were flooding. And here, in the heart of Asia, the ground was swallowing the innocent. This was the third contraction. The groaning was becoming a scream. Joel 2:30. And I will show wonders in the heavens and in the earth, blood and fire and pillars of smoke. The skeptics will say that earthquakes happen every year. They will say that fires are a part of the carbon cycle. They will say that floods are merely weather. And they are right. These things have always happened, but not like this. Not all at once. Not with this intensity. Not with this specific choreographic alignment with the ancient scroll. A woman in labor has contractions for hours, sometimes days. At first, they are manageable. You can breathe through them. You can talk. But there comes a moment transition, where the pain becomes total, where the body takes over. Where there is no talking, only the primal work of bringing something new into the world. 2025 was the transition. We stood in the ashes of Los Angeles and wiped the red dust from our eyes. We stood in the mud of Australia and listened to the ocean hiss. We watched the smoke rise from the cracks in Myanmar. And if we were quiet enough, if we stopped trying to rationalize the chaos for just 1 second, we could feel the vibration under our feet. It wasn't just tectonic plates. It wasn't just atmospheric pressure. It was the footsteps of something approaching. The divine hook. The earth has spoken. The red sky, the roaring sea, the pillars of smoke. These are not random disasters. They are the heralds. They are the physical manifestation of a spiritual reality that is about to crash into our dimension. But the earth is only the stage. The tragedy is not just about rocks and water. It is about the actors upon the stage. While the mountains crumbled and the forests burned, something even more terrifying was happening in the hearts of men. The black horse was being saddled. The love of many was growing cold. And in the corridors of power, a coalition was forming that would turn the rumors of wars into a nightmare of steel and blood. Nature has played its part. Now, humanity must play ours. We have seen the fire. We have seen the flood. But are you ready to see the darkness that lies within the human soul when the restraints are removed? The birth pains have only just begun, and the next contraction won't break the ground. It will break the bank, and it will break the peace.